So, for once, I really wish you wouldn't have to listen to this. There's a song by Phil Elverum from the Microphones that goes, "Death is real, someone's there and then they're not." All throughout this week, I kept being confronted by it on every TV, every radio station, every conversation outside a coffee shop, whenever I drove past road signs for Gondomar where he grew up, or the one night where I walked up to the Dragão Stadium and saw all the flowers. But whenever something similar had happened before, it didn't feel quite like this. I kept telling myself the reason this one was different was that it all happened so close to home. He grew up in the same district as me, playing against the same academy teams I did, and every time he spoke, he did so with that same northern accent that all my friends have. He never sounded like the people on TV. It all felt so familiar, but still I really didn't want to write this. As Phil Elverum sings in that same song, when real death enters the house, all poetry is dumb. That's how I felt for most of the weekend as I kept reading comments asking me to make some kind of tribute video, but then, as dumb as it may be, I saw Mourinho's speech and there's one thing he said that stuck out to me. He was a kid who nothing ever came easy for, so I started reading, hoping I could find a way to make sense of that feeling, and very quickly I found an old interview in which he said that I was still paying to play football when I was 16 years old, and that's when I realized that much of that proximity I felt wasn't geographic, it was existential, maybe. A lot of players feel fictional, almost higher than thou, like they were born to be superstars, but I never got that image from Diogo. That's why he felt like one of us. Years ago, when a reporter asked his parents to describe how he was as a kid, his dad called him the boy who never wanted top-brand football boots, heartbreakingly ending that sentence by saying that he always saw the true value in things, he always valued life. In a way, that modesty may have played against him at first. It was only at 16, after years of, as he said it himself, playing for fun, that he sort of broke through. Still playing as a midfielder, he scored 33 goals in 26 games for Gondomar's under-17s. By the end of the first round of that league season, he had scored against every team he had faced except Tirsense, so before their second game, trying to hype him up, his coach told him, "These guys are the only ones left. How's it gonna be?" He shrugged it off and just replied, "Let's go, coach." But then, he scored a hat-trick, and by the end of the season, he had made Gondomar district champions. It was enough for the Benfica scouts to show up, for Braga to bring him in for a trial, but again, nothing stuck. Trying to explain why, one of his youth coaches told the story of one scout who, after watching him, commented that, "Man, he's a lefty, but he sure loves to use his right foot." The thing is, Diogo was right-footed. He only mistook him for a lefty because he had trained himself to be ambidextrous, but even then they didn't pick him, maybe because he was never flashy, not one for many flicks and tricks, and that hurt him a lot. You have to realize that at that point his younger brother, the one who tragically was in the car with him, had already been playing for FC Porto since he was 10, alongside the likes of Vitinha and Fábio Vieira. Their father said that, after a while, no matter if he won or lost, after every game on the drive home, Diogo wouldn't open his mouth for a second, supposedly trying to figure out how he could improve. After all, it'd be hard-pressed to find anyone who knew him, not to mention how hard-working he was. Thankfully, on the last day of that season, playing against Pasto Ferreira, their president was there watching and he ended up being convinced to give him a chance. At 17, Diogo left his parents' house and moved into some dorm rooms Pastos had normally reserved for foreign players only, but things didn't go so well at first. He struggled to adapt, he wasn't scoring, repeatedly being overshadowed by this other kid named Rodrigo Oliveira, but as that kid eventually explained, this thing of Jota being a goal scorer is funny to me. Back in those days, he was the number 10 and I was the striker, but then I got hurt in a car crash, so the manager played him up front for a while, and he began scoring like there was no tomorrow. It was like 15 goals in just a couple months. By the time I made it back, I was the one being pushed out of position. However, when the next year they brought him up for his medical exam so he could play with the first team, it actually came out wrong. They found an irregularity in his heartbeat and he ended up sidelined for months, worried it could all be over. His dad literally called it the biggest scare of his career, but thankfully further exams proved it shouldn't be enough to stop him from playing, so again, he carried on, still refusing to get his own apartment, being the only first-team player to live in the club's dorm rooms, famously turning down every invite for a night out so he could stay in playing FIFA and Football Manager. Regardless, on his debut, he became the youngest ever starter for Passos, then, in that same game, the youngest ever goal scorer, not to mention the 2 other goals he helped set up. And only days after, somehow, he was called up to Portugal's under-19, suddenly sharing a locker room with the likes of Renato Sanches, Ruben Dias and Gonçalo Guedes. His parents were so proud they skipped work to watch his games. Passos even went as far as handing him a 4-year contract when it was club policy to not go longer than 2. However, it was still Passos. The floodlights weren't exactly shining down on him, at least not yet. The next season, new manager Jorge Simão made the decision to make him a starter, and by November, he had already been named the league's Young Player of the Month twice, even being moved up to Portugal's under-21s at only 18, which, you must always keep in mind, is way more impressive for a kid playing outside of the big three. By February, he was on 15 goal contributions in 20 matches, even scoring the league's goal of the month precisely against Benfica, clutching up enough matches for Passos that soon he had them in 8th place, only 6 points off of the European competitions. And then, with 6 matches left in the season, they played against Porto and he scored the only goal to beat the Portuguese Giants, bringing it back the next game, scoring an 88-minute winner from outside the box to clutch a 4-3 win, going another step forward by bringing down Braga 1-0 as well, with yet another shot from outside the box, edging them right onto those European spots, only to injure his shoulder the very next game and watch them fail to get another win and drop down just 1 point off of Europe. Still, at this moment, he had those who watched him wondering if the big three were hiding some secret grudge against him. His own club president had made the claim that he would become one of the best on the planet. His manager had gone as far as saying he'd be the successor to Cristiano Ronaldo, but as Benfica finally woke up to what was going on, it was too late, and out of nowhere, Jota was signed by Atletico de Madrid for 7 million euros. His old club's all-time record sale, made even more impressive by the fact he had never even sold anyone for more than 2 million. It was enough cash that they got to build a new stand for their stadium and even named it after him, but what seemed like a dream soon turned out to be just one more barrier. After finally trading those old dormitories for Madrid, it quickly became clear that it hadn't been Simeone's decision to sign him. It was just one more pawn in a loan scheme that his agent Jorge Mendes had worked out with Atletico's president Miguel Angel Gil Martin. He would never even get to play a single competitive game for them. Before the summer even ended, he was already being sent out on loan, and though the fact Porto ended up taking him in may have seemed like a light at the end of the tunnel, especially given that his brother was still at their academy, well, despite a first half hat-trick on his first start and a wonder goal against Benfica a few weeks later being enough to get the commentators yelling that he is so special, then, almost immediately, the goals dried up, and by winter, Porto had brought in new striker Tiquinho Soares, hoping to shake things up, and Jota ended up being dropped. Once the season ended, even with a goal contribution every 96 minutes, while Porto lived through one of their worst seasons ever, not only allowing Benfica to take a 4th league title in a row, but getting knocked out of the cup by Chaves and finishing dead last in their League Cup group, the fans' opinions on the player were divided, to say the least. But thankfully, their manager Nuno Espírito Santo, who had now been sacked, seemed aware enough of the untapped potential within him that, knowing his loan to Porto wasn't likely to be renewed, when he took over Wolves, he brought Jota alongside him. At the time, there was some criticism that leaving one of Europe's talent hotbeds for a loan to the English second tier was a step backwards, but Jota, he made the championship his own. By November, with 14 goal contributions to his name, they were already dropping 14 million euros to make his signing permanent, and by the end, he was only 4 goals off of the Golden Boot as Wolves made it back to the top flight after 6 years. And though the following season a niggling ankle injury would lead him to go his first 13 games completely scoreless, then he quickly hit 8 goal contributions in 7 matches, linking up incredibly with Jimenez and scoring a winner against Chelsea, then one against Newcastle, assisting another to beat Liverpool, and topping it all off with a hat-trick in a 4-3 win over Leicester, becoming only the second Portuguese player after Ronaldo himself to get one in the Premier League, not to mention the first since John Richards in 1977 to hit a hat-trick for Wolverhampton, meaning that once he brought his tally up to 17 goal contributions in 23 games, getting them to a 7th place finish, qualification to the Europa League, and above all, hitting a winner against United in the FA Cup quarters to get them to the semi-finals for the first time since 1998, he had become a club legend. As The Athletic wrote, that night the Molineux shook to its foundations. Unfortunately, a man of the match performance in the semis was ruined as he got substituted a minute from the end, only to watch Watford turn it around. Still, these were already the kind of heights he had grown up being told he was simply not worthy of. I mean, the man was now being called up to the Portuguese national team over summer. Even if still without playing, he became a Nations League champion regardless, and by the 3rd season, the miracle he had been praying for finally happened. As the newspapers claimed, Jimenez, Traoré and Neves were the true stars of the team, the ones bound for a big move. Even with Jota struggling in the league, he still managed to take over the Europa League, scoring their first European goal since 1980, and then, coming on with 34 minutes left against Besiktas, getting a hat-trick, and then making it 2 in a row the very next game. He had become only the 5th player this century to score consecutive hat-tricks in European competitions. It was only him, Ronaldo, Messi, Untelar and Luis Adriano. But then the pandemic came. This could have easily derailed it all, but as per usual, he prevailed, not only endearing himself to a lot of fans by putting his FIFA skills to good use and winning the Premier League's pandemic FIFA tournament, but taking advantage of a shaky transfer market and getting his name onto Klopp's new signing shortlist, watching their run for Timo Werner's signing die out, further moves for Ismail Assar and Jonathan David fall flat, and one way or another, securing a move to the ruling champions of the Premier League for £41 million. The day of the announcement, his old manager from Passos sent him a message congratulating him, and he answered back with just a link to the article where he had claimed he would one day be the successor to Ronaldo. His dream was complete, but now it was time for a new one. Even in a team with so many big names up front, with so many doubting he could even leave his mark, Jota shocked everyone by fitting in with no problems at all. On his Premier League debut, he scored against Arsenal, and a month later, he had become the first ever player to score in all of his first 4 matches at Anfield. He was already getting a Champions League hat-trick, being named Player of the Month, becoming the first since Robbie Fowler to get 7 goals in his first 10 matches for Liverpool. He had Pep Blinders calling him a pressing monster who would run against the whole world if needed. But so the goals kept coming, then came the first injury. He was out for 3 months and still managed to come back in time to flick in a backheel goal against United, secure a Champions League spot for his club, and a call up to the Euros for himself. As always, through all that came up against him, he persevered. That was undoubtedly his biggest quality. Perseverance, and in his 2nd season, he proved nothing he had achieved had come to him by mere chance. 2 goals in the opening 2 matches served as a heads up, and by October, he started a streak of 16 goal contributions in 20 games, all while frequently getting subbed in and out. He was on a contribution every 96 minutes for 4 months straight. 3 goals against Arsenal, 3 against Leicester, another in the Merseyside derby, a brace to put them in the League Cup final, and more against United, Atletico Atletico and Tottenham. In November, he even got named by the fans as the league's player of the month. He was just incredibly reliable, and that's why the fans fell in love with him. It's just a shame that they got so close to a quadruple, only to lose the league title by a single point and the Champions League final by a single goal, though. Above all, what hurt the most was seeing him struggle with injuries so much, now that it really seemed he was ready to step up his game yet another notch. The following year, a preseason injury ruled him out for a month, and just as he finally seemed fully recovered and collected a hat-trick of assists against Rangers, a second injury not only left him out for 117 days, it robbed him of what would turn out to be his only ever chance to play a World Cup. Heartwarmingly, during the tournament, he was actually spotted in the stands watching his brother play for his old club Gondomar, but this time, his comeback would not be so simple. Between his time out and a massive dry streak, Jota would go over a full year without scoring. Still, I have to mention, though often publicized as such, he really wasn't playing poorly. He still took 11 assists over the 16 starts he was able to make during that period, and most impressive of all, about 2 months into his comeback, as Liverpool went 5 matches without a win and saw even their place in the European competitions at risk, as always, he showed up. With a late appearance against Tottenham to score the winner in injury time, even getting what he called his favorite goal ever to clutch yet another 3 points against Nottingham Forest. By the end, he had scored 7 goals and assisted another within his final 5 starts of the season, averaging a goal contribution every 57 minutes as he helped Liverpool take a massive jump from 8th to 5th, securing those European spots and even getting within inches of the Champions League. An effort that became all the more impressive as soon as it was made clear that he really wasn't fully recovered yet. Over the 23-24 season, 3 different injury spells kept him out for a total of 25 matches, around 4 months, and still, somehow, midway through 2 of those absences, with Salah himself out playing the African Cup of Nations, he finally got the PFA's very own Player of the Month award, completely filling in for the Egyptian with 4 goals and 3 assists. That season really felt like one of the biggest wasted moments of his career. By the end, with only 19 starts, he had still hit 20 goal contributions, truly world-class numbers, but at least, once back from the Euros, things finally seemed to have started going in his favor again. Though, really, this is the hardest part of his story to retell. With Arne Slot coming into the team, a lot of people could have once again easily guessed that, especially with all the injury problems, he would have fallen out of favor, but no. Even through a couple more injuries, Jota persevered. In a season that will certainly now be remembered forever by Liverpool fans, may it be through his winner against Crystal Palace, the late equaliser against Fulham, or that other one against Nottingham Forest, Jota arrived at the Merseyside derby about a month away from the end of the season, knowing that a win would all but mathematically secure his first ever Premier League title, and so, 57 minutes in, he scored the game's only goal to do just so. Liverpool's number 20 had brought them their number 20. As the fans celebrated, the sheer number of times his name was chanted showed just how important he had been, and as midway through them, a reporter asked him if he had a message for Portugal, his biggest wish was obvious. As he said, "Portugal, we're gonna win the Nations League." And we did. We beat Denmark, we beat Germany, and finally, we beat Spain. I'd say I couldn't possibly imagine a much better summer, but then he got married to the woman he had loved for 13 years, ever since his high school days. He watched his brother graduate from college, and then I don't even want to talk about it. I feel it's been talked about far too much already. My biggest fear trying to retell his story was always becoming part of the noise. I just really hope there was some value to all that I've said here, all that I've written.
And look into the emptiness instead. All faith